Welcome to Resilience in Life and Leadership with your host, Stephanie Olson, speaker, author, addiction, sexual violence, and resiliency expert. Well, I had a great conversation with Christine Handy, so I am excited to introduce you to her. Christine Handy is an international model, best-selling author, breast cancer survivor, motivational speaker, humanitarian, Harvard student, and designer of an emerging swimsuit line for women affected by breast cancer. National and international modeling career that started at age 11, TV, radio, and podcast guest speaker on breast cancer and women's health topics, which include self-esteem and self-love. She is the best-selling author of the book Walk Beside Me in its second publishing and doing incredible things. And Christine Handy has an amazing story with an amazing message of resilience. Meet Christine Handy. Hello and welcome to Resilience in Life and Leadership. I'm very excited to be here with Christine Handy. Christine, welcome.
Hi, so good to be here.
Yes. So you've got quite a story, and I just talk about resilience. I love your story. So please just start from where you would like to.
Okay. Well, my name is Christine Handy, and I am an author. I'm a motivational speaker. I am a student at Harvard getting my master's degree.
That's amazing. That's fabulous.
I'm a mother of two boys. I'm a model, which in 2 weeks I'm modeling in New York Fashion Week as a for 4 or 5 different brands.
Wow. So you don't have a lot going on.
No, not at all. Yeah. I'm super bored.
Lot of free time. Okay.
No, there's more. I'm on the board of 2 nonprofits too. So, and president of one of those boards. So, but here, the truth is I don't have much of a social life because I'm on this great mission to help and inspire and lead women through pain, trauma, and difficulties. One of the worst pains that I've ever been through is the loneliness of going through trauma. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that I didn't have people around me. Yeah. I just didn't have anybody that understood me.
Absolutely. And I think that is so typical with any type of trauma. Yeah. Because you, unless you have a specific support system for that particular trauma, it's very lonely. Yeah.
Right. So I was diagnosed with breast cancer in 2012. I was 41 years old, had no family history, came out of nowhere, an aggressive form. Wow. But it was quite an awakening. Yeah. Really, I honestly, like, they tell people to get a mammogram at 50.
Yeah.
So you have all these people that are being diagnosed early, and they're not getting mammograms because the FDA or the CDC, whomever, is saying, "Oh, you don't need it till you're 50." That's a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah. Well, I was always told start at 40 in with our hospital, and I think that is so important because 50 is actually very late for breast cancer and what we see.
It is. And it's breast cancer rates are on the rise. Breast cancer deaths are decreasing.
Right.
But more and more people are being diagnosed with breast cancer. And of course, we don't know why. Anyway, going back to being diagnosed with breast cancer, prior to that, I had 2 other major health issues. Now, I came from a very privileged world. I had access to doctors. I had access to, different types of treatment and everything that I went through, but that doesn't matter.
Right.
I mean, it does.
It does in the sense that some people don't have access to good healthcare. Right.
But if you have access to great healthcare, that doesn't mean that you're going to survive. That doesn't mean that you're going to get through it with any sort of grace.
Correct.
And it doesn't mean that you have great doctors.
Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is because the year prior to my breast cancer diagnosis, I had this horrible situation with a doctor. I had a torn ligament in my right wrist. And I picked this doctor. He went to Stanford. I liked the pedigree. He worked in this clinic that was close to my house, but also really state renowned. Mm-hmm. And so he was also the the orthopedic surgeon for the Dallas Mavericks at the time. And so this guy's got pedigree. And
well respected. Yes.
And I think I can trust him. Right.
Right.
And I was taught as a woman to believe authority, to respect authority, to take authority's word almost above my own. Mm-hmm. And so I have the surgery. They take off the cast. There's something wrong. The doctor goes on to bully me for months, tells me I'm a hysterical housewife, which by the way, I never shed a tear in his office, but I shed a lot of tears, but not in his office.
Yeah.
Labeled me as a hysterical housewife. He told me the pain and the swelling was in my head. And so there was I know, talk about gaslighting.
Wow.
Well, months and months and months and physical pain, tremendous physical pain later. I went to see a second opinion, even though I was afraid to, because this doctor said, you don't need a second opinion. There's really nothing wrong other than,
any doctor that says you don't need a second opinion, you need a second opinion at that point. Yeah. Wow.
But you know what? If you're in a situation where you're being bullied or you're being gaslit, you have to have people on the visceral side, right?
Correct.
Who are saying to you, no, what he's saying isn't accurate. What he's saying isn't true. But I wasn't telling people that because I was ashamed.
Sure.
We feel shame when we're bullied.
Right.
And then we isolate.
Right.
So months and months go by and this guy's bullying me so badly. And I finally get up enough courage and see a second doctor. And he took one x-ray and my wrist, every bone in my wrist was broken.
Oh my gosh.
Every bone. Every bit of cartilage was gone. So I had an infection in my arm.
Unbelievable.
For 7 months, undiagnosed. I almost lost my arm.
Believable.
So now I'm handicapped. I have a fused right arm. And when I was up in New York, because I finally flew up to New York to HSS, Hospital for Special Surgery, to a doctor who I thought could help me versus a doctor that destroyed my arm. He fused my arm. There's cadaver bones. There's cadaver Achilles tendon in my arm now.
Wow.
And I was in a cast from my fingertips to my shoulder when I felt a lump in my breast. And 5 days later, I was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. That has got to be so traumatic and so overwhelming because you're already at the point where you've got some trust issues with the medical community and I think, I always say to people, we have to be our own advocates for our healthcare, but that's not easy to do. And it's intimidating. It's extremely intimidating. And so when you've come out of a situation like this, and now you're diagnosed with breast cancer, I can't imagine what you must have been going through.
Well, there's so much to unpack in that statement.
Yeah.
That we have to be our own advocates. 100% agree with you, but it's really hard.
It's very hard. Yes.
One, you have to go through a lot of ego,
right?
A lot of pride of men, mostly men, who want to push back. And so you have to be brave enough and you have enough self-esteem to get through that, first of all.
Correct.
Which by the way, I didn't have.
Yeah.
Okay. So then once you get through that, that's not the only barrier. Right. Then you've got to fight with insurance companies. Yep. Then you got to fight with, let's say the FDA, because I had implant issues. You got to fight with the FDA on the implants. So there's a lot of obstacles. Yes. And so oftentimes we just go, okay, it's too overwhelming. I'm just going to go back to listening to what I was told, which was respect authority and listen to the doctor. And ultimately that's what I did. And I live in chronic pain because of that.
Wow.
So if we don't talk about these stories, if we don't talk about what this looks like, bullying, gaslighting, what that looks like within the medical field.
Right.
Because somebody's going to listen to this and go, oh my gosh, like my leg, my arm, my limb, I'm going to go get a second opinion.
Yes.
And so we have to talk about these stories and not hoard these stories in order to help other people.
Yes. And to let people know they are not alone in those situations. And frankly, they're not crazy. They're not imagining those things. Yes. Yes. You know, and just very briefly, I had a situation where I was in, it was a life-threatening situation for actually my unborn child. And I said, this is going on. And it was a nurse actually who said, nope, we're going to wait. We're going to wait. Well, if I had waited, I would have lost my baby. It was a very time sensitive issue, but I had an advocate within that community, and that makes a huge difference. So I was able to fight it, but I had somebody with me who was fighting it on the medical side. And I think that makes such a huge difference. Yeah.
Well, a couple years ago and this pertains to what you just said, having somebody with you, which right now people can't because of the lockdowns and COVID.
Right.
2 years ago, I had implants in after I had mastectomies. I didn't have implants prior to breast cancer, but I did actually love the implants.
Yeah.
Because if your chest is taken away, for me, I wanted it back. Like, even if it's fake, I want it back.
Yeah.
And so since 2013 and my mastectomies, I had implants till 2020. And so in 2020, when the world is locked down in March 2020, in fact, it was March 25th, I had this like rash, this red, very hot burning sensation in my left breast cavity. And I texted pictures to my oncologist. I texted pictures to my plastic surgeon, and they said, get to the emergency room immediately. And they diagnosed it as a staph infection. So I'm in the hospital alone, listening to these doctors say, this is what you have. This is what we need to do to get rid of it. And in the meantime, I have kids, I have work, I have school, I'm like, and now I'm isolated in the hospital for 5 days. And then they sent me home with a PICC line and a nurse.
Wow.
So that was March of 2020. And then April of 2020, a month later, the exact same thing happened. So I have the red breast that looks like a red, delicious apple, that very bright red.
Wow.
Go to the hospital. And by the way, when you go to the hospital during COVID, you're not well received.
No.
There's nobody there with compassion, with open arms going, how can we help you?
Right. Right.
We know you're in pain. We know you're suffering. There's none of that.
Right.
There's like, put your effing mask on, or we're kicking you out.
Right.
So I get to the hospital. My doctor's inside. They admit me again for 5 days, still alone, and going, why is this not going away? I'm doing everything they told me. They told me to do I had IV medication. And now IV medication has other effects on you. Absolutely. It affects your liver. It affects your stomach. There's other things it affects. So now I have, 2 weeks of a PICC line, 5 days in the hospital, now 5 more days in the hospital. Now I have to take medicine after I get out of the hospital. And now it's like a month of medication. And I'm going, I already had chemotherapy. This can't be good on my liver. And I'm thinking about all this multiplier effects, right?
Sure.
Fast forward a month after that, I am traveling back to Miami, masked up. I have 2 flights and I get home. I get in my car at the airport, the Miami airport, and I feel this like pain. And I think to myself, it's nothing. It's got to be, there's nothing. They fixed me, whatever. Long story short, I get home, I pull off my shirt, and my shirt is sticking to my chest.
Oh my goodness.
On one side. And I think to myself, gosh, I must have been really stressed. I was sweating on one side. That's really weird. So I open my shirt and there is green pus oozing out.
Oh my gosh.
Oozing out of my chest. Like massively, like dripping out.
Oh my goodness.
And I don't feel good. And so I text my oncologist a picture and she FaceTimes me. Because she says to me, I want to see what you look like. Well, of course, I'm white as a ghost.
Yeah.
But don't realize how sick I am.
Wow.
And she said, she needed to see me. And she says to me, you have to go to the emergency room right now. And I said, I'm not going. I said, you guys have treated me for 2 months. And you said I was fine. I said, you want me to go back alone to the hospital where there's people that are not going to be nice to me because everybody's afraid that I'm going to walk in with COVID, which I don't have. And there's going to be despair and confusion and loneliness and worry. Forget it. And she goes, if you don't go, you're going to be in critical condition by tomorrow morning. It's not a staph infection anymore. It's probably MRSA and you will die.
Wow.
And literally, I sat on my couch for an hour crying, going, okay, I have a fused arm. A doctor bullied me. I had breast cancer. I had 28 rounds of chemotherapy. I've had 20 some odd surgeries, non-elective, like no like fun plastic surgery, right? No like eye lift, facelift, no butt implants. I mean, give me something good. And now I have to go drive myself to the hospital. Like, no. So my dad calls me and he's like, because my oncologist called my parents.
Oh, wow.
Oh no, it was really serious.
Yeah.
Like really. So my dad calls me and he's like, it's 6:30 at night. I cannot get to you. I can't get a flight there. You have to go. Ultimately, I went. And within 5 hours, I was in emergency surgery. And both of my chest was excavated for the third and fourth time.
Oh my goodness.
Which means
how painful.
No, the pain was grotesque. Absolutely grotesque. And I was alone.
Right.
And months and months and months go by and I am in total despair. Like those pretty little implants are now gone. Okay, what do you have for me, God? And I finally picked myself up and said, you know what? If I feel this bad, somebody else does too.
Wow.
So I'm going to get up. I'm going to call my modeling agency. I'm going to start modeling now with this concave chest. And that's what I've done for the last 2 years. That's why I'm walking in New York Fashion Week, because I want to show other women who have lost their chest that we are just as beautiful. We may look different, but that doesn't dismiss our beauty. That doesn't negate our beauty. We are strong. We are powerful. We are united, and we are collectively stronger together. And so that's exactly what I'm doing 2 weeks from tomorrow.
Wow. I absolutely love that. Good for you. And the courage that takes, you know, I really want to address the societal beauty issue, because I think when you grow up as a beautiful woman, there are expectations that you put on yourself. And I don't mean you, I mean, you know, everybody. Collectively. Yes. And so first of all, aging is hard. Right. And there's that idea of, okay, well, I'm losing my looks, quote unquote, which is not an accurate statement. Right. But then when you start to mess with your physical looks, especially your breasts, because that is just a part of womanhood. That is, I mean, it's just a big piece that is so traumatic in and of itself. And I can imagine that's not something that people even want to address.
You know, I never thought about it until I lost them.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one little short story. When I first lost my chest, not back in 2013, because I literally woke up from my mastectomy with expanders in. So I never looked in the mirror without a chest.
Sure. Right.
Regardless if it was metal underneath, it didn't matter. I never looked in the mirror without a chest. And so in 2020, and I have a social media presence. So I post a picture on social media and I'm completely concave. And I'm like, okay, this is what happened. And this is, I'm struggling. Whomever didn't read the caption they just saw the picture. And this gentleman said in the comments, were you born a man or were you born a woman?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it took me like 3 days.
Wow.
It took me 3 days to respond to him. And I was saying to myself, all these things like, maybe my friends and family aren't telling me how bad this really looks, because I'm not covering it up. I don't wear prosthetics. I wear tight clothes because that's who I am.
Yeah.
And
that's how God, you. Good for you.
Yeah. I mean, that's how God made me. I'm like, right. I'm not going to put a padded bra on, whatever. I mean, right. Everybody to each own.
Right. Right.
If you need that, if you want that, then you should have that.
I love that.
I don't want it. I don't want it. And so it took me like 3 days. And I mean, I have a strong self-esteem. I'm unstoppable. Now I wasn't prior to breast cancer, but I am now. Wow. And so that guy tripped me up.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, you can't let some random person affect you.
Right.
Like this isn't who you are anymore. Your self-esteem is rooted in faith. Your self-esteem is rooted in your trust in yourself. You're not going to let somebody stomp all over you or make you feel insecure about this.
Wow.
So I responded with grace, right? Because we can all respond out of malice. We can all respond out of pride.
Yes.
But I wanted to respond out of compassion.
Wow.
That's what I'm trying to do in general. And so I responded to the guy and I said, why did you ask me that question? And he never, in fact, he responded back and he just said, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. And that was it.
Wow. Interesting.
It was over. And I think it's so indicative, especially of the world we live in right now.
Yeah.
If we respond out of malice, if we respond out of pride and ego, we're going to get that back.
Yes. Amen to that. That is, so I work in the field of domestic and sexual violence and things like that. And there's a lot of anger that comes with sexual violence, of course. And people who are abused should be angry.
Yeah.
However, one of the things that I've noticed is that when educating someone, and in my real world, I run a nonprofit and we do prevention education on human trafficking, social media, and healthy relationships. And when educating people, you have to come at it with compassion, with engagement, and with total transparency. And our focus is youth. And what I've seen is that so many people will ask a question, and whether the question is an honest question or whether the question is presented in a way that is inappropriate or trying to bring a rise out of somebody, the response in order to truly educate people has to be like yours. It has to come from a place, you may be angry, but it has to come from a place of, I am not going to present myself as angry so that other people can truly learn. And that is a hard thing to do. Yeah.
It takes years. It took me a long time to practice. Now I've been abused in other ways as well, not sexual.
I'm sorry.
But so I know that pain. I don't know sexual abuse. And that's a whole nother, I can't speak to it. I don't know it. And I don't want to ever make somebody seem like I'm understand it. Cause I don't.
Sure.
But that when you are abused, they steal your power.
Yes.
And the only person that can take it back is yourself. Nobody can give it to you. But here's what I think. And this is years of trauma, obviously the physical trauma and also the abuse. If you don't have people that you can turn to, your courage can lessen. Yeah. And there were points in my life through this traumas where my courage completely fell. Yeah. Like I had no courage left. And that happens. But if you have people around you, and I call it a courage net, you are that. You are able to say, I've lost my courage. I've lost my bravery. I need you to stand in this space for me until I get it back. And if they do, you will get your courage back. And that can mean calling the suicide hotline. That could mean calling. It doesn't mean that you need like 5 friends around you. Right. But it means you have the ability, you have the knowledge to make a phone call on your behalf and just say, I'm at my wit's end. I can't do it anymore. I need somebody to carry me.
I absolutely love that courage net. That is fantastic. And I think that's a great point. And I think sometimes when we think about support, that is what we're thinking about. We're thinking, okay, well, I need 5 friends around me, but there are resources that we can access that are free, that are available, but it still takes courage to pick up the phone and access those resources. Yeah.
Well, we're prideful people.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to, let's talk about social media for a minute.
Oh, let's.
I mean, everybody puts you should check out my social media today.
I am excited. Yes.
I got on there. I was like, I'm so tired of the highlight reels. I'm so tired of the fake perfection. I'm like, let's be real.
Yeah.
And so like yesterday, for instance, there was an article in Fashion Week is a magazine. And it includes Paris Fashion Week, Milan Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week. And there was an article about me in Fashion Week yesterday. And it said the one to watch for New York Fashion Week. And it was my pictures, and it was my story. And it was
awesome.
And I woke up to it. My manager sent it to me and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And I'm not saying it in a prideful way, like, oh, it's about me. I'm so excited to showcase this for breast cancer patients and for people who have lost their chest. So the bigger audience, the more people I can inspire. Within 2 hours, I got news that something had happened to my son, who's 21.
Oh, wow.
Nothing mattered.
Yeah.
Not the article, not what I was doing for Fashion Week, not being interviewed, not my social media. And so I got on my social media today and I said, I had this amazing high in one day and I had this amazing low.
Sorry.
But that's life.
It is.
But let's not make each other feel bad by only showing the article. Let me show you. I'm not going to specifically tell my followers what happened to my son.
Sure.
But I said to them, I said, I had a great high and I had a great low. And I feel terrible right now.
Yeah.
And I want you guys to follow people that are telling you the truth.
Right.
Because if you show up on social media and you feel bad about yourself and you're looking at all these people that have the highlight reel and aren't vulnerable, man, that's going to make you feel worse.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's the importance of telling a story and telling the true story. Yes. And, it's so interesting because I speak in a lot to women. But so often I'm speaking about the very thing I'm going through at the moment. So it's never the, hey, I've arrived and this is who I am. It's always the going through this right with you. And I think that is so important because people need to feel they're not alone.
But I applaud you for that.
Well, thank you.
That takes a lot of bravery and courage. Vulnerability is not easy for any of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're
right. You're right. So I love hearing what you're doing. I love hearing, what you have is incredible courage, incredible bravery. And I love the transparency. And now, are you in New York?
No, I'm in Miami.
You're in Miami. Got it. Okay. My daughter lives in New York. So maybe I can get her to go see you at some point when you're.
I'm in New York a lot.
Are you? Okay.
Yeah.
She
trains.
She trains with Alvin Ailey dance company. So
amazing.
She is my hero.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking here. I don't want you to think I'm checking my texts. I'm just looking at because there is so much to your story. I mean, it is so amazing. So what advice would you give somebody who has been diagnosed with cancer? And you definitely went through it at that very alone and different time, and things are improving, but they're not better as far, not 100% as far as the pandemic. What advice would you give people?
I would figure out who your idols are. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is, prior to my diagnosis, I had a lot of false idols. I idolized materialism. I idolized other people's opinions of me. I idolized outside accolades. I idolized celebrities. I sought to emulate being somebody that was different than me because I thought people would love me for that. And so once you're faced with that kind of like life and death, right? Somebody gave me my percentile chance of survival at 41 years old. That's insane. I had an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old, right?
Wow.
I'm like,
wow.
What? And so I had to figure out, like, what was I standing on?
Yeah.
Was I standing on the Prada bag that was that going to comfort me at night?
Yeah.
Was that Versace dress that I had to have going to comfort me? Heck no. What was it? What was the missing piece? And for me, that was faith. Yeah. And it was like, I knew I had faith. I always had faith. I grew up Catholic. I knew that God existed. But I didn't tap into that. I didn't rely on that. I relied on society, which, by the way, doesn't work.
No, it really does not. Yes.
Empty. It's depleting. It's not at all self-serving.
It doesn't care about you.
Doesn't care. And your self-esteem gets whacked every single day.
Yeah.
And so once I was like, I did this wrong. I'm going to redo this. Yeah. Then I started to pound into my faith. I started to preach it. I started to practice it. I started to learn about it. I listened to podcasts about it. Nice. And I had a lot of space of time where I was sick. So for 15 months, I was going through chemotherapy. 15 months.
Wow. That's a long time. That's a long time.
Single week. And when I was on that bathroom floor throwing up, I was listening to a podcast on how to learn a better way because I was lonely and I was wrecked.
Wow.
But I did the work. And and the other thing that I did was I built my self-esteem back up.
Yeah. Because
I started to trust myself and I started to look, I bald. I was bald. I had no facial hair. I looked like a little old lady.
Yeah.
If you Google Christine Handy and you look at pictures of me back then, you won't believe it.
Wow.
And I look in the mirror and go, wow, these people are showing up for me. They didn't care that you were pretty. They cared about who you are. And once you figure out that people will stay, even in your worst time, then you start to believe in yourself and go, well, if they're going to stand for me, I can stand for me.
Wow.
And I just went through this major time of introspection, but it's intentional.
Yeah.
Like I could have had e-news on all day long.
Right.
And gone back into that materialism and gone back into that, kind of bowing down to the celebrities and how can I be more like that?
Yeah.
But I'm like, no, that didn't work for me. And now I could be facing death. I don't want to live the rest of my life, however amount of time, like that.
Wow.
And so in turn, I was showing bravery. I was showing courage to the people around me, including my sons, because I made that shift, right?
Yeah.
And my intention was when I was healthy enough, I was going to show the world what I did wrong. And that's super vulnerable because it's
messy. Absolutely.
It's not flattering.
Yeah.
But if by sharing my story and I show the way I did it wrong and the way I'm doing it right, maybe that will teach people and maybe that will save them from going through a fused arm.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I absolutely love that. And there's not very often I'm at a loss for words. So well done.
I've been on many interviews where I got interviewed 63 times last year. And I don't say that from a pride perspective.
Wow.
I can really tell a story because, and I think that I'm here for that because I was started modeling when I was a child and I was in front of a camera for 40 years.
Wow.
And I truly believe that was preparation for me to help and serve other people.
Yeah.
So it's no accident that I'm able to do this because God knew I needed to do this.
Well, and I think that is the bottom line. When we live for ourselves and just ourselves, it doesn't work. And so if we can actually surrender those things to God and say, okay, you know what? I am not the one, so I'm going to let you take over. It's amazing what he happens. Does. Yes.
We're facilitators. He's
yes.
I mean, and I don't do it for my name. It's like, people are like, oh, you've been so successful. It's like, that's just not what this is about.
Yeah.
Like, listen, those are the accolades are sweet, right?
Yeah.
Like article in Fashion Week, that's a sweet thing.
Absolutely.
But the loves of my life are my children. And if they're hurting, none of this matters.
That's right. And it puts it all in perspective for us. And I think that's the key thing. I think we're in, because of social media in part, I think social media is a great thing and a curse all at the same time. Absolutely. And I think because of social media, we tend to compare our very worst to others' best. And that's a really hard place to be. And so when we can look at it and say, okay, you know what? This is not reality. This is reality. It just changes everything. And we don't grow through the amazing times. We grow through adversity.
The hard times. Yeah. The failures. Listen, I've failed more than most, and it's taught me to be who I am. But judgment and comparison are self-esteem destroyers.
Yes, for sure.
If you know that, you will stop comparing your life to other people. You know what I mean? Because you'll know that it's going to destroy your self-esteem.
Right. And I do think it's hard to do. I think those are the times. And, like I said, we teach youth about social media safety and those kind of things. And as an adult, there are times I just have to unplug. Absolutely. Because it is, okay, so I can see this is not a healthy reaction from me. And so I'm just going to have to unplug. And that's when you spend time with your faith and turn it over and, okay, let me get to the real source of what I need to keep going.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that.
So if you're newly diagnosed, if you're going through trauma, figure out what your idol is.
That's great.
Whatever it is, that's what you're going to be standing on. And the idols that I had, that was quicksand. Yeah. And I sunk.
And be willing to find new idols if those aren't working for you.
Yeah. And also be willing to find yourself.
Yeah. Wow. So what would you say today is the biggest message that you have learned out of all of that, whether we're talking the trauma early on before breast cancer, or what you went through with the medical community and breast cancer itself? What is it that you would say is your, I would say, top 3 messages?
Well, I guess the most important message is let go and let God for me. Mm-hmm. That's my go-to. That, like I said, yesterday was a very difficult day and I worried a lot. That worry doesn't add a second to your life.
No.
And so I had to constantly remind myself, let go and let God. But it's not easy. And I'm not saying that these are easy fixes.
Right.
It takes time and practice, and you'll still trip yourself up, but keep going back to that. The second thing is, I think you have to root yourself in a very solid self-esteem to get through this life.
Yeah.
And there will always be arrows, whether it's health arrows, family arrows, friends arrows, business arrows. It doesn't matter. You're going to be attacked on many levels through your life. Build your self-esteem. Imagine a world where we say to our youth, especially the women, teach them how to change their self-esteem, self-talk, self-love. And that would change generations of people. Yeah. Because we wouldn't be like subservient to men, to doctors, to authority that's not teaching us what's right.
Right.
And you and I have a responsibility to do that.
Right.
And so that's a big message of mine. And the other thing is that the third thing that I have learned in my life was nobody's going to do it for you.
Yeah.
It's not their job.
Right.
When I go through trauma, when I used to go through trauma, I'd be like, well, where's my husband? Where's my family? And it's like, I have to show up for myself. At the end of the day, I gotta be good with me. And again, it goes back to the self-esteem, but it also goes to the faith.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where is your measure?
Right.
Is your measure with that article in Fashion Week, or is your measure with God?
Wow. Yeah.
Is your measure in society, or is it in family? I mean, where is your measure? I'm not measuring myself against other people in social media. I'm measuring myself against my faith.
Yeah.
That's it.
So how do you tell somebody who has been told their whole life, you have no value, you are not worthy, you are ugly, you are this? How do you tell somebody to find that self-esteem to do something different than they have had all of their life?
I'm not an expert. I can only say this from my own trials. I never felt worthy. I never felt valued. I felt like I felt worthless.
Right.
And part of it was self-talk. And I'm not blaming myself, but when we get tapes, whether it's from other people or from ourselves or from both,
right,
we have to take those thoughts captive every day.
Yeah.
What I mean by that is, if I say to myself today, that was a shitty interview, you suck. You did a terrible job. You're not going to influence anybody. You're not going to help anybody. You're not going to lead. You need to do better.
Yeah.
I've just slaughtered myself.
Yeah. Yep.
If I say to myself, you know what, you showed up.
Yeah.
Regardless of how it turned out, you showed up for yourself and for other people. That's different self-talk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I used to say the other.
Right.
But I took those thoughts captive and I said to myself, you can't say those things about yourself anymore. And until you stop, you're always going to believe those thoughts.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I would tell them is it's not an overnight fix. It's going to take a long time. And you got to get rid of the people that are saying those things to you.
Yeah.
Gently, kindly, with grace, get them out of your life.
Right. Right. And I would add, and this, I probably shouldn't even add this because this is an entire conversation in and of itself, but allowing yourself to forgive those people and those things, because a lot of times we think, well, I'm not going to give forgiveness to that person who doesn't deserve it, but forgiveness is all for us. It's not about the other person. It's releasing us from holding on to that bitterness and that pain and that anger.
Yeah. You know, it took me a long time to forgive that doctor that left me in pain. I've not had a single day of peace and pain-free in 10 years. Not a single day. I mean, the pain used to wake me up at night. It's horrible.
That is terrible.
But I forgave him because it was this huge backpack heaviness of pain that I was giving myself.
Yes.
Listen, God's going to deal with him.
Yep.
Vengeance is not mine. Again, it's easy to say, harder to do.
Yeah.
But if you remind yourself of that, if your self-talk is, I'm going to get back at that person.
Yeah.
I'm going to make him pay. That's hurting you. That's not compassion. That's vengeance. That's malice. It's pride.
Yeah.
But instead, you want to be compassionate. The most important person that you need compassion for is yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you have compassion for yourself, you have forgiveness in your heart.
I love that. So great. This is so good. So any final things that you would want to say to anybody going through, this is going to be loaded, but anybody going through trauma, through any sort of medical issues, whatever it may be, what's your final message?
I mean, I've been through a lot of trauma. I've had a lot of physical pain, a lot of emotional pain. And the way I speak to myself on the darkest days has been the most critical.
Yeah.
Because I do have this kind of fight or flight mentality where if I have a terrible thing happen to me or my children or something, then I just want to flee. I want to run away.
Yeah.
But you can't run away from yourself. You can't run away from your brain.
Right.
So once I say to myself, okay, you have to stay put, you can't run, then I start to talk to myself. Okay, let go and let God. Okay, self-love, self-talk. What can I do today to self-soothe? And if you go right into that mode, it can be 5 minutes. It can be, a 10-minute walk. And the other thing that I would say is if you've been hit by trauma, which unfortunately we all will,
right?
The most interesting and helpful ways that I get through it is by serving others. And it helps other people, but it also helps yourself.
Yes, it does. Yes.
Because it brings meaning to your pain. And we all want to find meaning in our pain. And if by sharing your story helps somebody else, and share your story. But there is always purpose in pain. And remember
that is so good. So how do people find you, Christine?
I'm out there. I'm on social medias. I'm Christine Handy 1 on Instagram, but in general, Christine Handy. My website is christinehandy.com. I'm out there and I'm accessible. Like I respond to messages. I love hearing from people.
That's great.
So
and we'll make sure to put all of that in the podcast notes so that people can find you and get in touch with you and just walk through your journey with you. I think that is so fabulous.
Well, and of course, my book is a good tool too. Walk beside me. And
so talk about your book.
Yeah, I'll give it a 1-second clip. It's a great book for people because a couple reasons. One, it shows how showing up can save a life. Like when you show up for people, it can really change their life. And my friends were all in, like through trauma after trauma. And so I have a friend who gives my book all the time to people because she says it's the best way to be a friend is to learn about how to, in this book, because she said there's so many tools to see what Christine's friends did for her. And so those are good takeaways, but it's also, you know, like I said, it's very vulnerable and it talks about very unflattering things about the life that I was, the life who I was to now. And it's a fictional depiction of my life. So it's basically this podcast written out into a 400-page book.
That is fabulous. Thank you for that. Well, okay. Final question. What does resilience mean to you?
Getting back up each day, even in darkness.
Yeah.
Because and that's self-love. Resilience is self-love.
Not always easy, but so important.
So hard.
Important.
Resilience is hard.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your story, for just being so vulnerable and being real. It was fabulous. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And thank you for listening to Resilience in Life and Leadership, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening. Please share with anyone you think will benefit from this podcast.